Hey, Presidents TV, we're incredibly fortunate because we're getting to talk to Erwin McManus. Thank you for being with us.
I'm glad to be here.
Today.
Good to meet you, Ryan.
Likewise.
I like your jacket.
Thank you. Yeah.
Laney?
Yeah, it's our family's favorite.
That's my son-in-law, the
Yes,
drummer.
we know.
Yeah,
we know.
Jake Goss, my daughter Mariah.
Can we talk about that for a second? Let's just go straight off the bat. I mean, it wasn't necessarily going to be the first question, but every time they've come to Sydney, the kids have insisted that we go. So the line is out the door of whatever club or venue it is up the street, and we've just fallen in love with their music and thrash it around the house all the time. Some of the best songwriters in the world today. But what is extraordinary to me is, and no doubt a big part of your leadership, but just how freeing it is that your son-in-law is not just in one of the most successful bands in the world today, played Coachella, but when he's in town, he's playing worship. And that's a really hard thing to balance. And I'd just love to unpackage that a little bit and just get your views, your thoughts on how that works so well and how he's been able to sustain that.
Well, he wasn't allowed to play worship because my daughter's over all of our worship, and she made him go through the whole process just like everyone else. And he had to come on our volunteer staff and make all the commitments and serve. And he did it all. And Jake is amazing. He would come to our gatherings. He would stay in 3-4 gatherings in a row on the front row worshiping. And what people don't see is the level of humility and kindness and servanthood that he brings to the table. So he doesn't just automatically play when he comes home, but he is our favorite drummer.
That's amazing. And it permeates, like as a band, it certainly permeates. You can see, even in secular circles, the favor of God on people. The Holy Ghost hijacking the secular world all the time. And I know you don't prefer for Mosaic to be referred to as a church, but it's obviously certainly a community of people.
Oh no, we're definitely a church.
But not necessarily.
I went ahead and accepted. I went ahead and accepted that. Yeah, that's right.
How much would you put down to the fact that a big part of their success has been because they've been in such a healthy community, a healthy church, where that form of expression is not just supported, but it's celebrated? Would you say it's a big part of it?
Well, I wouldn't say that for Laney, because I think that a huge part of that is Jake has great parents. Right. He has a great family, and they raised up a great man. And I love hearing the story when he first came to Mosaic. He saw Mariah up there leading worship, and she looked down and she saw him right away. So it was one of those things where I think they're both making a connection before they ever had a conversation.
It's incredible.
But Mariah has really, really high standards. She's a really talented artist. She's a brilliant songwriter and singer, and I don't think she would have attracted someone who wasn't committed to doing something and be the best in the world at it.
Incredible. Incredible. And your daughter, I mean, the thing about Tremble as a song, there's plenty of great worship songs. The world's been flooded with great worship songs.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's kind of like that. Not in terms of things standing out now. I mean, brilliance has become the norm. But because the message, obviously, songwriters are writing is songs that are going to point people to Christ on a regular basis. But it's the heart, the spirit behind the song, where it came from, just the depth of that well. Were you surprised at how well Tremble has done? Because every time we hear that song in a worship service, it's like you hear it for the first time. And I'm just wondering, is there a story behind that song?
There is a story behind it. I'm looking over there at Aaron, because we were talking about this yesterday. My son is over here, and Tremble did not make the album.
No kidding. Is that right? Did you cut it?
No, I added it. Because Aaron came to me and he said, "Dad, you need to hear the song."
Is that right?
And it was not going to be on the album. It did not make the cut.
My gosh.
And we had to kind of fight for it a little bit. And and so it's one of those pieces where when Aaron heard it, he told me, he goes, "Dad, this song, it's just going to go all over the world."
Is that right?
And Mariah has such a high standard. Like I know you said brilliance has become the norm. I probably would push back and I go, no, brilliance is still rare.
Still rare?
Yeah. And I know what you're saying, that we're getting so much better and so much better and so much better that what used to be brilliant is now average.
Sure.
And I think that's a part of what you're
mediocrity. It's sort of
Yeah, and isn't what's supposed to be. What used to be the best is now supposed to be the average.
Yeah.
And we just keep all pushing each other up and pushing each other up. I think there's a moment where there might be another song that's more technically perfect, right? As a musician, you'll go, this song has all the technical parts. This song doesn't have all the technical parts, but there's something about this song that resonates with the human spirit at a level that we can't fully comprehend. I think Tremble is that kind of song. I think Tremble is that song that says something that has not been said.
Yeah.
That accesses a human experience that all the other great songs had not yet accessed. And that's one of the challenges, is that you can, once you write Shout to the Lord, there are 100 other songs that are shouting to the Lord.
Of course, 100%.
And it's not that those songs are not written better, they're just not creating a new space.
Yeah.
They're trying to sit in the same space.
Yeah, it's already occupied.
It's already occupied,
Yeah.
and I think that's what a lot of worship leaders don't understand.
No.
If you're writing a song that is essentially reflecting or shadowing a song that already existed, you're not creating a new narrative. You're not saying something that has yet to be said, that needs to be said.
That is amazing.
And I feel like Tremble is traveling the world because it's saying something that needed to be said,
Sure.
the church needed to say, and we didn't have a language yet to say that.
And it's so timely because there is a passivity that believers often settle for. We analyze worship lyrics in one of my classes at college.
That's
right?
awesome. I love that.
So one of the weeks, we'll throw up a dozen worship songs from different time periods and around the world that have actually had an effect. We analyze it and we listen to the spirit behind it. And when we did it with your daughter's song, so what do you guys hear? As soon as it hits the bridge, bang, something blows up.
Yeah.
What do you hear every time? And people were fishing for it because you hear other songs. Maybe we hear brokenness, maybe we hear sacrifice. As soon as you hear that bridge, you hear authority. There's a huge authority in that particular bridge. And I'm just wondering the journey for your daughter in gaining that spiritual authority. Can you
That
talk
is such a great insight, because that is one of the unique characteristics of Mariah, where people don't realize they look at her as a singer or a songwriter or a musician, but she's actually one of our church's strongest leaders. She has almost an inherent spiritual authority.
Well, it shows. It permeates. The thing is, as believers, we're not ministers of need, we're ministers of the Spirit. So we need to be able to read atmospheres like that. And very often believers don't know why they like something or why it's so amazing. But as soon as you hear that song, there is a huge spiritual authority. For her, was that a journey from a young age that you saw unravel, develop? Was she always like that?
You have kids?
3 teenagers.
So you know that they're all so different.
Yes.
And they're on their own journeys and they find their way through. And Aaron and Mariah have had very different journeys. And one of the things that's unique for Mariah that I think helps her with Tremble is she always, she's never a person who left her post.
Wow.
She's one of those people that, when the scriptures talk about like the watchman at the gate, she's just that person who manned her post. When she was 14, she was leading worship.
Is that right?
She was manning, and she was singing in nightclubs all over the city. She was on Hollywood Boulevard. She's writing her secular music. She has music on Grey's Anatomy and other TV shows. But she always had that faith. She always stood in with her relationship with Jesus. And I think that's why at 26, Tremble can come out of her, because it's 10 years of manning her post. She just didn't run.
Is that right?
She hung in there. She had deep faith, a profound journey, and sometimes, she'd come and say, Aaron has a different story. I mean, he ran hard and fast, and he had a lot of stuff he had to grapple with, and he had to really struggle to find his own faith again.
Yeah.
And in many ways, it's almost like the more profound story, right? People go, oh, that story pulls so many people in. It's classic.
Yeah.
And Mariah's like, what about my story? And I go, look, girl.
That's good. That is really, what about mine? Yeah.
I know that you don't have the same twists and turns on the outside, but she had the same twists and turns on the inside.
It's amazing.
Grappling with faith, struggling with her career. Weeping when she came to me and said, God's called me to do this, because she knew she was giving up a secular career that was really successful and had great potential. She's felt the price of those sacrifices. She's felt the tension.
Yeah.
She's had moments of great discouragement, and moments where she feels very alone in the world. But she just kept manning her post. And I think that is,
what a girl.
To me, that's what Tremble is declaring.
Yeah.
That the darkness is going to have to tremble, because I'm not going to.
Isn't that amazing? In the mid to late 2000s, after Barbarian Way just blew up, a friend of ours in church got on a plane and thought, I got to check this out. And he did. And he went and he absolutely loved it. And the book caught a lot of people's attention in the circles of influence, and a lot of Christians in our church and in Sydney and all over the world, really, but particularly from our area of influence. It was intriguing, and off he went, came back, and just said how amazing it was, how amazing you were, the community, the feeling in the place. But strangely enough, after that, you kind of disappeared off the grid, and we know bits and pieces around that. But and look, there's been enough interviews that you've done and been quite candid about the fact that a big part of it was just loving your kids and willing to take a step back because they'd seen a lot and possibly been hurt.
Yeah.
And then how amazing it was you and your son came back from New York and said, Dad, I know how much you love public ministry and a call to it. I just wanted to say that in doing that, you really showed everybody who you really are by not prioritizing ministry over marriage and family. And I would just love to talk about it if you feel comfortable.
Sure.
All around the world, there seems to be this pattern of people prioritizing ministry over marriage and family. And by doing what you did, it was kind of like not just showing everybody who you really are, but your value system, everyone having a front row seat to your value system. It could wreck the church, or at least send shockwaves through a church if we suddenly flipped a message on its head. How do you prioritize family and marriage over ministry? How do you become so self-actualized and so secure within yourself when many can't do it and find it extremely difficult? I'd just love to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think when I didn't do it for the public, I did it for my family,
Amazing.
And in that sense, I did it for myself because I just love my family more than I love ministry.
Wow.
I love my son more than I love writing books. So it didn't even feel like it was selfish. I mean, like selfless. I was doing it because that's what mattered to me.
Incredible.
And I kind of like looking and thought, Christianity will be fine, and but my kids only have one dad.
Wow.
And so it was really easy to understand my priorities and what was important. And I wish I'd done it better. Honest with you, I wish I had made more decisions that way and better decisions that way. And so I don't have any regret for that. And I never lamented it. I never had moment going, oh, look what I lost. I felt like, look what I gained.
Amazing.
My son is, he's like, my best mate.
Great shows.
I love doing life with him, and my daughter, she's like my heart, and I love doing life with her, and like Kim and I, we talk about this. Look, when it's all said and done, everyone who's mad at us, everybody who is disappointed in us, they're not going to be there.
Yeah.
And it's going to be me. I told her today, it's going to be me and you. That's what's left when all this is, said and done. And I think part of the problem is that so many pastors, as well intended as they are really feeding a deep ego need.
Wow.
And that comes through a small amount of fame or celebrity or public praise. And I just think you have to really check your own spirit and go, why am I doing this? And I don't mean that in a condescending or judgmental way. I think that there's a lot of brokenness.
Yeah.
Where we haven't found our own sense of identity or fulfillment, so we're always having to feed our own ego to feel like we matter, that we have self-worth. And I'm just grateful that with all the problems I do have, that wasn't the one that buried me.
Were you surprised when your son called you that day and said, I think it's time? Did it come as a shock? Or?
Yeah. When I got that text that said, Dad, if we make films and make bags but don't take Jesus to the world, we've accomplished nothing. Yeah, I was really surprised.
Wow.
And
didn't see it coming.
Because it wasn't my outcome goal.
Right.
My outcome goal was just to love him.
Incredible.
And hope that one day, he would find that meaning and that intention, that joy that only Jesus brings in his life, and so it kind of caught me off guard because it was. I mean, he's like this. He's an extremist. I mean, I don't know why, but my son is like you take the pages of the Barbarian Way, and that's pretty much who he is. Is
that right? Really?
So he's an extremist. So he's either going to he's either going to destroy everything or create everything. He's either going to go to war for darkness or go to war for light. he's not going to kind of live in the gray. And so I think that's a fair description. He's over there, and so when he sends me a text, I didn't wake up that morning going, today is going to be the day, but I was surprised how quickly he shifted to going, I'm in.
Incredible.
We got to go fight this battle for the world now.
Wow.
We need to step in, and align our hearts completely to Jesus and follow him completely. And then he flies home and he says, Dad, you've only been giving 80%, and the church needs you to give everything. And then he later sends me a snarky text going, it wasn't really 80%, it's really closer to 60, maybe 40.
Yes, how encouraging. Our kids really do that, don't they? They fuel the way, and God uses them. He speaks through them many, many times.
Yeah.
Look, you're known for being a huge innovator, pushing the boundaries, seeing things from a bizarre and novel way, getting us to break out of predictability. It's an extraordinary thing. It's such an edge. And a question that for me is a ticking time bomb. Like, this is always on the edge of my lips. I'd love to get your thoughts on what you think the difference between artistry and creativity is.
Yeah, I noticed that on your list. I was just looking over at the camera, and I thought, one, when we have a lot of something, we have an endless number of words to describe it. When we only have a little bit of something, we only have a word.
Right.
So I'm from El Salvador, and in my country, there was no snow. So we had one word for ice cream that doubled as the word for snow, nieve. And then you can add, as you travel through Central America, there's sorbetes and paletas, but we only have a few words, but we only have one word for snow, nieve. But when I went to North Carolina, and I said, oh, this is snow, they go, no, these are flurries. Oh, this is snow, no, this is sleet. Oh, this is angry snow, this is hail. And I began learning all these different words for what I would have just called the snow.
Right.
So part of the challenge in the church is the church basically abdicated its role in the creative process in the world. So we didn't have a lot of language for creativity.
Can you say that last bit slowly? Abdicated its role?
Its role in the creative process in the world.
Right.
The church should be the most creative enterprise in human history.
Yeah.
So we should have 40, 50 different words that nuance the language of creativity. But we're just almost reintroducing the creative process to the church. So when we talk about artists, everyone thinks of painters, dancers, filmmakers, writers. And that's why in the Artist and Soul I talked about how everyone is an artist at work. Everyone's a work of art and an artist at work. And trying to reframe the whole idea of artistry. Just because your profession isn't in the arts, and doesn't mean you're not an artist.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I'm not an Olympic runner. I don't know, how about you?
Afraid not.
Probably not an Olympic
I was.
athlete, right? But if you walk into the Nike store, there's a quote that says, everyone is an athlete. Now, you can either be cynical and go, no, everyone's not an athlete. Most of us are just eaters.
Yeah, right.
Or watching athletes on television. But, I try to stay healthy. I love playing basketball. I love working out. I think of myself as an athlete. I know I'm not an Olympian. So there's a difference between an Olympian and me as an athlete.
Yeah, right.
There's a difference between Picasso and maybe my artistry, right?
Yeah,
I can understand and appreciate the difference of greatness, but it doesn't mean that I don't have an expression of that.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It's crystal clear. It's fantastic.
And so I certainly think, I think artistry is a tangible manifestation of the human spirit, of the human soul.
Love it.
And so I think artists are extroverting the soul. And whether it's painting or music or whatever it may be, dance, think about it. Dance doesn't exist unless the dancer's dancing.
Yeah.
It's like fire. Fire is the only element that ceases to exist. And then suddenly it exists. It's always there in latent potential, but it's only there when it's activated.
Yeah.
And art is in many ways the activation of the human spirit, of the human soul expressed outwardly. And so in that dance or in that work of art and that music, it was always inside of the human spirit, but then it's externalized, it's activated. I think creativity is the creation, the creative process of creating something that does not exist.
Right.
And so creativity is the materialization of the human imagination.
Incredible.
So like this table is an expression of human creativity because it once existed in someone's imagination.
Yeah.
And then it's materialized into real life. And so I would almost see like art as the poetic aspect of the human soul.
An extension, it comes from within.
It's an extension of within.
Yeah.
And creativity is the materialization of the human imagination.
Incredible.
So like the cell phone existed in someone's imagination, then we materialized it. We don't think of that as creative, right?
No.
You know, I mean, this furniture, it's a part of the creative process because someone imagined it and then created it. So the reality, from my framework, all human civilization is an expression of human creativity.
Wow.
And like my wife, she's from a farm in the mountains, and she'll always say, when can we go back to nature? And I go, well, you know, if God doesn't exist, then it's all nature.
Yeah.
The city is just a human beehive.
Yeah.
And we don't realize that all civilization is an expression of human, what's naturally human.
Right.
We just don't think of this as being natural. Right?
It's incredible.
And so I look at it and go, I hope before we die, there are like 80 words we're asking about, not just artistry and creativity.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. It's amazing.
Know, I hope that we're so nuanced in our creative process that you're going, okay, explain to me the difference between imagination, creativity, artistry,
Innovation.
right?
Yeah.
Innovation, you know, poetry. Like, talk to us about the difference of all this, and I hope that we get to a place where the listener goes, well, the differences are so obvious.
Yeah. I love what you said though, that creativity is something that we conceptualize. It didn't exist once upon a time, but in someone's imagination it did.
That's right.
Look, I want to just talk in closing about this because this is incredible.
Yeah,
really
we can
is.
talk about creativity all day long.
We could, and please, hopefully again sometime, but this is extraordinary. Can I just say, and I really want to ask you this question because there are certain books you pick up and you want to throw down because it speaks to you, there's a degree of healthy conviction about it, all this sort of stuff. And I'd just love to get your thoughts on how do you balance a life between emptying that quiver, right? But also a life of care and rest and of peace. How do you know how to do this divine dance between the two by living a life with no regrets, emptying the tank, fulfilled dreams, this sort of thing, but not taking yourself to a place where you're suddenly over-functioning and you're killing yourself in the process? I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Well, your listener may not realize that the book's called The Last Arrow.
Yep.
and yeah, the subcaption, Save Nothing for the Next Life, is pretty intense. And I'm very intense.
I love that. I'm just curious to know how to balance it.
Yeah, so here's my understanding of balance when I don't believe in balance. So I'm just going to say that I think it's much better to live a skewed life than a balanced life. I don't see Jesus living a balanced life. I think he lived a skewed life. I want to do less of what I wasn't created to do and do more of what I was created to do. That's how I want to skew my life. And the way you move to this level of intensity without burning out is stop living a life of obligation and start living a life of intention. Because it's obligation that burns you out. Intention never burns you out. When you're living your life with intention, it's naturally renewing and replenishes who you are. When you're living a life of obligation, it sucks the life out of you, and it leads you to burnout and self-destructive behavior. And so I think what's really important is not to diminish how much you give in your life, diminish how many things you're giving your life to. I hope that helps.
Are you kidding me? The whole world needs to hear what you just said. Erwin McManus, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. Great to be here with you.
You take care.